And thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We do have a lot to talk about, so we are going to get started. My name is Mara Tippett. I am a watershed scientist at Raritan Headwaters, and I manage the organization's well testing program. Christy McDonald, our science director, is also on the line and will be moderating this webinar. If anyone has any technical difficulties, and I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our guest speaker today, Scott Baxter-Green, the manager of water quality and environmental compliance at New Jersey American Water, who'll be discussing efforts in the public water sector to combat lead contamination. Please use the chat or Q&A features to type your questions during the presentation, and we will address those at the end of the webinar during our discussion period. So for anyone unfamiliar with Raritan Headwaters, we are a nonprofit watershed conservation organization, and since 1959 we have worked to secure clean water for present and future generations. We protect land and water in our watershed and beyond through science, education, and advocacy. We have a large watershed to protect. You can see the bold outline of our watershed in this map, an area which drains to the north and south branches of the Raritan River. The south branch flows south from Bud Lake and Mount Olive to the confluence with the north branch in Branchburg, if you can see my cursor here. The south branch flows from Bud Lake and Mount Olive, and then the north branch flows south from a spring-fed stream in Mendham to the confluence where the main stem of the Raritan then flows east to the Raritan Bay. Our Headwaters region plays a crucial role in the state's water supply, providing drinking water to over 1.5 million people downstream. We have two of the state's largest reservoirs here, the Spruce Run and Round Valley reservoirs, and nearly 300,000 people call the Raritan Headwaters region home. So municipal and county officials are responsible for making many important decisions affecting local drinking water and stream water quality. And the goal of our Watershed Tools for Local Leaders seminar series is to empower them with knowledge to make the best possible decisions, foster partnerships, provide practical guidance on scientific principles, useful tools, government regulations, and funding sources for watershed protection. And while we've missed holding these events in person, we've adapted our program into a webinar series to provide easy and safe accessibility. We have a number of seminars scheduled over the next couple of months that we hope you'll find useful and informative. You'll have an opportunity to learn about watershed planning, protecting water resources, water quality in our streams, and how to incorporate climate vulnerability and adaptation planning into your town's master plan. And you can register for these upcoming events and view past presentations on our website. And not a webinar, but an important upcoming event, our annual watershed-wide stream cleanup is on April 17th, and you may be getting an invitation to register for that in the next day or so. So come out and be outside and pick up some trash in the streams, and it'll be good to get out there again. So it seems like forever ago that lead in drinking water kind of dominated the public health headlines, but it certainly hasn't gone away, perhaps just taken a back seat temporarily to the more pressing and immediate concerns of a global pandemic. Before 2016, which is the year Governor Rick Snyder declared a state of emergency in Flint and the National Guard started distributing bottled water to residents, lead was really not on our radar as a major public health concern. But Flint wasn't alone, and more stories surfaced from around the country with St. Joseph, Louisiana's lead contaminated water making international news, and then closer to home, Newark, New Jersey struggling with elevated lead levels in schools and throughout the city. And we even had our fair share of local headlines when the results of the mandated school testing were made public in 2017, and elevated lead levels were found in 2 Hunterdon County schools, West Damwell and Lambertville, and one of those is on public water and one of those is on a well. And in fact, across New Jersey, lead in drinking water threatens human health. Even in small amounts, lead causes irreversible brain damage in children. It can get into the tap water through a lead service line connecting your house to the pipe in the street, or pipes in the home, lead solder used in plumbing, well pump components, and some brass fixtures. Lead solder was used on copper pipes until 1986. And then from 1986 to 2014, brass faucets and fittings sold in the US that were labeled as lead-free could contain up to 8% lead. And then lead service lines are still found in many of our older communities. On this map, the areas highlighted in light blue are those served by a community water supply, a combination of smaller systems, such as little Stockton Water Department down here, which serves their population of about 600 people, to much larger purveyors like New Jersey American Water, which serves about 2.7 million people in the state of New Jersey. And the issue, though, it's not confined to urban areas or public water supplies. Really, residents in rural areas who rely on private wells are also at risk, and particularly in homes built before 1986. And so all of the area not in blue are all those areas where people are relying on their private wells for drinking water. So the pipes and fixtures inside your home, which may leach lead into the water, they wouldn't be identified through the regular testing performed by your water purveyor. So testing your tap is really important, especially, again, if you live in an older home where the risk of lead exposure is higher. But water companies are doing a lot to combat lead contamination in our drinking water. And so with that, I'd like to welcome our guest speaker, Scott Baxter-Green, to share his expertise in this area. And Scott, I will stop sharing and hand it over to you.
All righty.
Thank you so
See
much.
if I can share my screen here. All right. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Great, terrific. Thank you, Mara. And I'm glad we really got a chance to get together. I know we've been planning this for a while, and COVID got in the way. So I'm glad we are at least virtually be able to get everybody together and meet. So my name is Scott Baxter-Green. I'm the manager of water quality and environmental compliance for New Jersey American Water's Central Region. Been with the company 36 years now. So today we're going to discuss lead, I guess, from a water purveyor's point of view, the different regulations that are involved and how we provide a lead-free water to our customers. So with that, yeah, just a little overview of New Jersey American itself. We're the largest water purveyor in the state of New Jersey, providing water service to areas as far north as Passaic County, Little Falls, as far west as Frenchtown, New Jersey on the Delaware, as far east as the Jersey Shore, and as far south as Cape May area. Today, we're concentrating, my area is the central operations, which is basically the Raritan Headwaters area. So if you see the map there, everything in blue, and the light blue is water that we're providing, or our service territories. We service 57 municipalities in the area. That's over 215,000 customers, providing water service to Hunterdon, Mercer, Middlesex, Somerset, and Union counties. Most of the water is being provided by our two surface water treatment plants. Our Raritan Millstone plant provides about 155 million gallons a day, and Canal Road treatment plant treats 80 million gallons a day. Both of those surface water plants are located at the confluence of the Raritan and Millstone rivers in Bridgewater. We have the option of taking water from either location. We usually use the Raritan water Raritan River water because it's of a better quality. So, and as probably many of you folks already know, the Raritan River does get supplemented by some releases from Round Valley Reservoir and Spruce Run reservoirs. So, and proud to say we are a river-friendly facility. So thank you for the acknowledgement there. So I thought it'd be fun just to see the many ways we've abused and led over the ages. Just starting in that picture up on the top left there, that's Queen Elizabeth I. And in order for her to get that beautiful pasty white complexion, she used something called Venetian ceruse makeup, which is a lead-based makeup, which provided the white pigmentation. Lead doesn't normally get absorbed through the skin, or maybe just in very small amounts, but when it's that close to the mouth or when you have it on your fingers, it's easily to get ingested and into your system that way. Then to the right of her, of course, we have lead paint, which was popular back in the day. The lead provided a white pigmentation, and it also added some strength to the paint. So if you had something that you knew was going to take a lot of physical abuse, like a child's crib or a child's toy, that added some strength to it, and that was used in something like that. I'm showing my age here, but when I first started driving, I had the option of getting gasoline with leaded or unleaded gas. The leaded gas added some octane to the gasoline and prevented some of that knocking that you would get in a lead-free gas. So, and then finally to the bottom right, we're starting with lead plumbing, and this is a picture I took in the Roman Forum. So the ancient Romans started using lead plumbing back in the day, and it was really the elite that had the metal lead plumbing. The poorer people had stone aqueducts and stuff to provide their water. But lead was a popular metal for delivering water because it's a malleable malleable metal, and it's easy to shape the pipes into whatever form you wish. So that's why it was used back in the day. So now, of course, sources of lead. This is our present sources, which unfortunately reflect a lot of what we've done in the past. We're still dealing with lead paint. Some older homes still have lead paint in them. The lead chips are around that are possible for ingesting for children. Even when it's sanded down, you get some of those dusts that make their ways into soils and yards and playgrounds. Some of the products that we use, a lot of the products that are used in the United States have pretty strict lead regulations, but some foreign countries don't have the same lead regulations that we do, and you may find some products with lead in them. And different jobs and hobbies. I remember as a kid fishing using weights called split shot, which were little tiny lead marbles that you would put on the fishing line, and in order to tighten it on the line, you bite the the lead ingot there and get it on the thing. So that wasn't very smart. So, and then of course our meeting today we're talking about lead in drinking water. So why are we concerned about lead? Because of the health effects, of course. Mara pointed out some of these similar ones. The biggest one, of course, is it causes impaired mental development. There's been studies that showed that the higher lead blood levels have shown lower IQs. It also causes damage to the red blood cells, damage to kidneys, lower birth rates, and especially in young children, you've got the elevated risk, young children and pregnant women. So let's talk about drinking water regulations. Prior to 1991, the regulations for drinking water facilities were to test for lead as it left the water treatment plant. Nobody ever detected lead because that's not where the lead is. In all of our sources, the rivers, the reservoirs, the groundwater sources, we're getting less than detectable amounts of lead. As Mara pointed out, it's the biggest source of lead in drinking water is from the home plumbing. And it took until the 90s to realize that the lead contribution in drinking water was coming from those sources. So the objective in the new and improved drinking water regulations in 1991 by EPA was really focusing more on reducing the water corrosivity. So those rules required that water systems collect tap samples, not from leaving the water treatment plants anymore. We wanted to pick sites that are have more concentrating on homes that have lead plumbing, either lead pipes or service lines, or copper plumbing with lead solder. And the rules also required water utilities to check for water quality parameters, basically to assess how corrosive the water was in the distribution system. The sampling process, as I said, involved with taking samples from customers' homes that were known to have lead plumbing. We want to get a worst case scenario. So basically, we want water that's been lying stagnant in those lead lines for a long period of time, at a minimum 6 hours or more. The longer the water comes in contact with these sources, the higher possibility some of that lead can get into the drinking water. We also want to take those samples during the summer months, June to September, when the water is at the highest water temperatures and more corrosive. And we want to get samples, as I said, that first draw of water after water's been lying stagnant for 6 hours, so we get a worst case scenario. Those hours of the day normally are when people first wake up in the morning after they've been sleeping all night, not using water, or when they return home from work and no one's been home. So this changed the sampling procedure. Instead of water utility staff collecting water samples, or instead of showing up your doorstep at 6 in the morning with our pajamas on, what most people do is leave bottles for the customers to collect water samples with a set of instructions on how to do that. As I said, it's a first draw sample that's required. And once the results come in, they are given to the customer, good or bad. So how is compliance determined? Recognizing there are some outliers, out of all the sample results that are in, 90% of those samples have to be less than the action level of 0.015 milligrams per liter of lead. So what happens if those samples are above that? The water utility is required to go and increase the efficiency of their corrosion control program. They have to do different things in their treatment process to make the water less corrosive, and those plans also have to be approved by DEP. They also have to go out with some public education, letting the customers know that there are some elevated lead levels out there. And it also requires the utility to start replacing all lead service lines in the system. I believe it's 7% a year until it comes back into compliance. So Amara had a typical slide, or a similar slide to this. This shows a typical water service line. You've got the water main in the street, which is the water company's property. It's typically a ductile iron, cast iron main. And then to provide water to the home, a smaller line goes from that main to a water shutoff valve. This little section is called a service line. And that, depending on the age, can possibly be made of lead. We see mostly lead service lines in homes that are built in the 20s, maybe early 30s. So the water main and that small section of municipal service line to the curb stop is the water company's property. Then going from that shutoff valve across your front lawn into the home, that is the homeowner's property and responsibility for maintaining. So what are the corrosion control techniques that we use at a water facility? At New Jersey American Water, we use phosphate-based corrosion inhibitors and orthophosphate-based. And basically what that does, once the water enters your home, that small amount of phosphate adds a very micro-thin coating to the internal part of the internal diameter of the water pipe. And that creates a barrier in between the lead and the drinking water and prevents any of that lead from leaching out. Also, part of the corrosion control technique is to monitor for water quality parameters that might make the water more corrosive. So what can we do as consumers to cut back on the amount of lead that we're getting? The easiest, best way, cheapest way to avoid getting lead in your drinking water is any time that you've had the water sitting stagnant for six hours or more, just open up the cold tap, let it run for 2 or 3 minutes. This way you're flushing out all of that stagnant water from the home plumbing, which may have lead in it. And this way you're getting water in from the street, from the water main that is lead free. So that's really the best and most efficient way of ensuring that you're getting lead-free water. Another thing to keep in mind is not to cook or drink water that from the hot water faucet. Hot water is more corrosive than cold water. Also, it's a good idea occasionally to remove the screens on the end of your tap and just check for any lead solder which may have broken free and hanging up on the screens there, and clean those off. You may want to check if you're having a lead issue at home, check your electrical grounding. Electrical grounding usually is grounded to the water pipes. And if there's too much stray current, that can cause some galvanic action and cause some lead corrosion there. And another thing to keep in mind also is home water treatment. If you have a water softener, keep in mind that soft water is more corrosive than hard water. So if you have a water softener, you might consider bypassing that for some of the kitchen supply where you're using it for cooking or drinking. The lead, some things that we're doing also at the water company, ones that would normally be required if you failed to meet the action level, we're doing it just voluntarily. We've been replacing lead service lines at a regular basis throughout our service territory whenever we come across it in the field. This year we also we're lucky enough to, through a DEP grant, we're replacing all our known lead service lines in Hillside, New Jersey, which is our highest population of lead service lines. So this grant allows us to not only replace our customer side of the service line, or I'm sorry, not only the utility side of the service line, but also the customer side as well. So how did we do last year? This is last year's sampling results, where we were required to collect 50 samples. We normally send out sample kits, 60 or 65 kits. We don't always get all of them back, but we analyzed 52 sample locations last year, and our 90th percentile was 0.002 milligrams per liter, which is about 7.5 times lower than the limit that it's set. And of course, change is inevitable, except maybe from vending machines. But yes, just yesterday, the EPA issued a notice saying that their rules will be changing in 2024. And it's just some comparisons to the existing rule and the proposed rule right now. As I mentioned, 90th percentile of lead has to be below the 15 parts per billion of lead. They're keeping that in the new proposed rule, but they're also adding another trigger level of 0.01 milligrams per liter, which would require some additional monitoring and treatment. Another change that they're proposing, instead of collecting that first liter of stagnant water, they feel that that fifth liter of stagnant water would be more representative of the service line. So that might be a little more tricky to collect for the customers. And in the existing rule, 50% of the samples should be collected from lead service line, the other 50% from copper plumbing with lead solder. They're pushing more for having all of the samples be collected from lead service lines if they're available. That should be the preference. And many other changes to come as well. So how do we communicate to the customer all our lead results, or actually all the results that we have on all the testing that we do? On an annual basis, we publish what's called a consumer confidence report that gives a list of all the chemicals that we test for and how we meet the state and federal requirements for drinking water. Those consumer confidence reports are on our website. You'll see in bill inserts that starting in June, how to access those reports. And also we put out some radio, newspaper ads, and we're very active in social media to get the word out and how we're doing. Other education and outreach is done through lead education materials. We have fact sheets, not only on lead, but a lot of other contaminants that may be in drinking water as well. So those are on the website, they're in bill inserts, and we also have ads in local newspapers. So that is a summary of what we do at the water utility. And I think at the very end, we're going to be doing some Q&A, correct, Mara? Or?
Yes, that's right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Scott, for that excellent presentation. I love the overview of the history. Do you hear an echo on my voice here a little bit?
Yes, Mara.
You do. Okay.
Should I go on mute?
Could be because maybe if you stop sharing, Scott, that will stop. Oh, there we. Okay, great. Yeah, no, I love the overview of the history. I remember finding some of my father's old toy soldiers in the attic and having to tell my son that he could, in no uncertain terms, play with those and certainly not put them in his mouth. And then a great tip to check the grounding. That hadn't occurred to me, so I learned something new today. We've come a long way just tackling this widespread and complex issue. I'm going to share my screen again and talk a little bit more about, the private well side of things. In 2001, the New Jersey Private Well Testing Act was signed into law. And this is a consumer information law that requires the sellers or buyers of property with potable wells in New Jersey to test the untreated groundwater for a variety of water quality parameters, and then to review those test results prior to closing. Landlords are also required to test their wells every 5 years and then provide each tenant with a copy of the test results. And about 20 to 25% of the wells in the state have been tested under this program. Lead is one of the required parameters. However, the samples taken are often not first draw samples. As Scott pointed out, that is the best way to take a lead sample. The water may have been drawn in the afternoon, and so we do still recommend that residents, even if they've just moved in, that perhaps they do a follow-up lead test, if they live in an older home, just to double check that, to get that worst case scenario. So current public health lead limits range from 5 parts per billion in Canada to 15 parts per billion in the US. And there are pending bills in the New York State legislature that would lower the threshold for lead in drinking water to 5 parts per billion. and perhaps New Jersey will follow suit, we'll see. The World Health Organization and other public health organizations have concluded that there is no safe level of lead in drinking water, and that even very low concentrations can cause negative health effects, especially for infants and children. And so in 2016, also, the New Jersey State Board of Education promulgated regulations that require testing for lead in the drinking water of all public school districts, charter schools, and state-funded early child care facilities. So these new protections have made a big impact on public health, and we have come a long way, even just since 2016. However, there are still a great number of people who should be testing their water for lead to determine their level of exposure and then treating the water accordingly. And local efforts to provide community-supported testing programs help prevent exposure to drinking water contaminants by making the testing process convenient and affordable. And Raritan Headwaters has made lead testing available through our community well testing program for decades now. And we partner with municipalities to host local events, which then allow residents to test their water for lead and a host of other contaminants, such as bacteria and nitrates, which are tests that are recommended annually for private wells. We do have a number of wells scheduled for spring, and you can see the calendar of spring community well testing events by visiting testmywell.org. That's a page on the Raritan Headwaters website, which discusses our community well testing program. The first up is East Amwell, and there's their flyer there. And this is what it used to look like before COVID precautions basically setting up. And this is our Raritan Township Environmental Commission, and we're here waiting for samples to be returned to us. But to adapt in 2020, we continue to hold these events. We just obviously made some changes to be able to keep everyone safe. So we're really glad that we were able to still, give people an opportunity to test their water, even during the pandemic. The success of these events in getting people to test their water is really due in large part to the efforts of the partnering municipality in hosting the event and getting the word out. A study we conducted with Columbia University found that 88% of the participants in our well testing program that year had heard about the program through a township communication, and 64% tested out of convenience. So these are important factors to consider, whether we're talking about lead testing or energy conservation or a host of other behaviors that we're trying to encourage that benefit public health or the environment. Really just, make it simple and make the message clear. So data from our own watershed the same year that Flint made headlines showed that 10% of the wells that we tested that year had levels that exceeded the current maximum contaminant level of 15 parts per billion, or 0.015 milligrams per liter. And you can see the red dots is the outline of our watershed again, and the municipalities that we partner with. And you can see the red dots indicating the homes where higher levels of lead were found. They're not clustered in any one particular area, but really widespread throughout. And according to a study done in 2016, New Jersey's untreated groundwater shows a high potential for being corrosive, and Scott touched on that in his presentation. And this increases the risk that water coming out of the taps of homeowners with private wells may be tainted with lead. This is a data infographic of lead test results from 2019. 14% of the wells that year had levels over 5 parts per billion. Again, that's not our US current standard, but that is the standard for bottled water, and also in Canada and perhaps New York. Lead contamination from lead-based paint and dirt and dust accounts for most of the exposure, but lead from drinking water can make up to 20% of a person's total exposure for lead. And this can be much higher in bottle-fed infants who are drinking formula that is made from water, with potentially higher levels of lead. So, again, this is not confined to any one particular area. This is kind of, it really depends on the age of your home and what your pipes are made up from. So half of the homes, or 51% of the homes that we tested, had some level of lead contamination that year. And we had one home that tested at 267 parts per billion. And I have to say, I was not happy to see that, but I was really happy that they tested and found that, so that then they were able to treat their drinking water. So not to get too far into this, but lead, it's a pipe issue, but it's exacerbated by changes in groundwater chemistry. Acidic water tends to dissolve lead from pipes or solder, and high chloride can make lead water soluble. Researchers have found that the consistent use of road salt in the Northeast has heightened salt levels in the water year-round, because the chloride has penetrated into the groundwater, where it seeps back out into our rivers and streams. And Brick Township Municipal Utilities Authority have actually done a lot of work on this issue. They looked into this correlation following a bout of high lead results in the drinking water there, and then found that indeed road salt being used on area roads was exacerbating their lead problem. So it's a complex issue, but we've made great strides in New Jersey. So to address the risk from lead in water, Jersey Water Works, with support from the Fund for New Jersey, convened a 30-member task force of representatives from local, state, and federal government, water utilities, academia, environmental, and community advocates, and public health organizations. Raritan Headwaters, as well as New Jersey American Water, have members on this task force. And in October of 2019, the Lead in Drinking Water Task Force issued a report, shown here, which outlines actions New Jersey can take to address the lead issue. And these were incorporated into Governor Murphy's comprehensive lead plan to virtually eliminate lead in drinking water in 10 years. These include a 10-year goal for the replacement of all lead service lines, the disclosure of LSLs and visible lead indoor plumbing at home sales and rentals, mandatory lead service line inventories, state subsidies to assist localities with high lead who are in fiscal distress, and then a strengthening of water sampling and corrosion control, and more education and public outreach. Also, an exploration of possibly lowering that action level lower than 15 parts per billion. Newark developed a plan that would not only drastically reduce exposure to lead in drinking water, but really serve as a national model for doing so. And as of today, I just checked their website today, they have replaced 17,617 lead service lines since March of 2019. So that's pretty impressive. And they have a running count on their website that ticks and changes almost daily. And they are in line to meet their goal or exceed it of replacing 18,000 LSLs in 24 to 30 months. So to pay for this, in August of 2019, Newark secured a $120 million bond with help from the Essex County Improvement Authority, which allowed the city to cover the full cost of the replacements and then cut the time frame for completion down to under 3 years. So it's impressive, and I'm going to share resources in one of my last slides, or you can take a look at what they're doing over there. So just some take-home messages for residents that you can share with your residents and neighbors. I think the big one is to test. Test your water, see if you have an issue there, and then, as Scott mentioned, the kind of quickest, easiest, cheapest way to rid the water of lead is to flush the standing water from the pipes, and then at some point installing a water filter so that you're not constantly flushing and that the water is being filtered. The water filters are certified by the National Sanitation Foundation, so it's important to look at whatever product you're looking to install that it has been certified, and that those are products that have been verified to reduce lead from 150 parts per billion to 10 parts per billion or less. Testing your pH, as you mentioned, acidic water can exacerbate the lead issue, so test your pH. And then acid neutralizing systems could be installed if you find that pH is the culprit there. It's also important to note that sometimes water softeners may also make the water more corrosive. So, testing the water again at the tap after the water has run through your system to see what's actually coming out from the tap where you most often get your drinking water from. So some additional resources, and these slides again will be posted on our website. You can go back and click on all of these links and explore these resources. But we do have a lead toolkit up on the Raritan Headwaters website that has a lot of information about health impacts and testing, and so there's a lot of resources within that resource that you can explore. More about the Jersey Water Works, the Lead in Drinking Water Task Force. New Jersey Drinking Water Watch is a place where you can explore testing results of community water supplies. So if you lost your report, you can't find your water quality report from your purveyor, you just want to jump on and kind of take a look at the latest testing that your water supplier has done, that's a resource. You can find your water supplier there and the results. You can look for violations, so that's a good resource. Information regarding school lead testing at the DEP's website there. More information on products that have been verified to remove lead can be found at the National Sanitation Foundation website. And then again, more about the Newark's lead service line replacement program there. So yeah, I just, thank you so much for spending an hour of this beautiful day with us to learn a little bit more about lead. It's a very important issue, and we have made great strides, but we still have a lot of work to do. And thank you once again to Scott Baxter-Green for joining us today and sharing his expertise from the public water side of things. And we will take some questions.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to read the questions from the chat and the Q&A to Mara and Scott, and then they will, take over, decide who best to answer each one. We have some really great questions that have been coming in. There's still more coming in now. The first one here from Steve Foster, who's actually a very strong partner in the well test program and other things, and serves on Raritan Headwaters Water Quality Committee. Do American Water and RHA get together for National Drinking Water Day awareness of testing for lead?
Not that I'm aware of, Mara. I don't know.
Maybe we should start, Scott. We'll have to look into that.
That's why I chose that as a really good question, partially because I think Steve's kind of suggesting that's a good idea.
Yes, thank you for the suggestion, Steve.
He has a lot of great ideas.
Awesome idea. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. See, we're all about fostering partnerships here at the Watershed Tools for Local Leaders.
And here's a question from Robert Lewis. He's also on our Water Quality Committee. Does lead in New Jersey drinking water ever come directly from the aquifer?
I have never seen it from the aquifer itself. We do testing not only from the homes with the lead service lines and stuff, but we do it on our raw water supplies as well. But I've never detected it in any of, our river sources, reservoirs, or wells. So it's primarily from the home plumbing and corrosive water.
Okay, thank you. And we have a question from George Casa, also he's on our board at Raritan Headwaters and member of our different committees. How long does it typically take for a private well that has consistently tested within acceptable lead limits to exceed safe limits? Can this occur unexpectedly, without warning, within a year, for example, or does it usually happen more gradually?
Well, I don't, it's strange in that, you know, we use the same homes from year to year for the lead testing. And 1 year I'll have a sample show up as non-detectable, and another year I'll have it as with some detections to it. So it can vary. For the most part though, even though there is some detection, it's usually below the action level. So I think it depends more on the length of time it's remained in the pipe. You know, it has to be sampled a minimum of 6 hours, but yeah, we've seen once, I had a very high one once and called the customer right away to find out what, you know, if they had changed any home plumbing or anything. It turned out they were away on vacation for a week and took the sample after a week of stagnation. So that was for that elevated level. So, you know, stagnation time means a lot.
And I think also changes in water chemistry too, right? So if you install a water softener and you hadn't had one, you want to make sure you test after that. I think, testing every 5 years is good practice if you are in an older home and there's the possibility of lead contamination. And, just changes in water chemistry. If your water is, you could monitor your pH, and if your water becomes more acidic, it may be time to do another lead test. So those are some things to consider as well.
Mm-hmm.
Another question from Steve. Are there plans afoot to train townships and counties to use road salt more safely, less near bridges and streams, etc.? Sorry, that was actually not the one I meant to read, but it's a good question.
Well, I think we're planning another webinar on road salt, and hopefully we'll be able to tackle that question in more detail.
So stay tuned.
Yes.
I would love it if there was, because I'm noticing the problem more and more each year. It seems to get worse with the sources.
It is. It's just haphazard spilling, and yeah.
I realize you have to, create safety, a safe driving experience, but we're seeing more and more salt every year, after a snowfall.
So here's another one from Steve. This is the one I meant to read. Are there programs to proactively seek out lead pipes in well homes, meaning private wells, or public system homes, where we are actively seeking lead pipes to see which homes have them?
Well, we're required to. It's part of, public utility to seek out those homes. And it could be difficult at times because most of these lead service lines are ones from the 1920s and maybe early 30s. And records, in some towns, we have very good records of what materials were used in the service lines. Some towns, not so much, or those records have been lost over the years. So a lot of times we'll try and guess based on the age of the home and actually have to do some excavations to see if in fact they are lead service lines, or to see the service line coming in through the basement or near the water meter to see what that material is. But it can be difficult at times.
Yeah. And as far as, homes on private well, I mean, again, it's really up to the homeowner to do their testing and to investigate, what their pipes are made of. And then, either, most people will choose to treat the lead rather than to start replacing their pipes, but that's certainly a way that you could go also. So, but to my knowledge, there's no, there are no, plans to try to inventory lead pipes in homes on private well.
So do you recommend that everybody test if they live in an older home?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, whether you're on public water or private well, if your home was built before 1986, 87, definitely test your kitchen tap or wherever you get your main drinking water source for lead. And as Scott and I mentioned, as a first draw of the day sample is best practice. And, that's you can't see it or smell it or taste it. And so really the only way that you're going to know it's there is to test for it. So.
Another question, do you have any data to indicate typical installed costs for a residential lead filtration system?
I do not.
I mean, you can get a faucet mount filter that can treat lead for $40, you know, I mean, and it runs the gamut. I mean, you can put a whole house acid neutralizing system in, which could cost several $1,000s to treat the pH, which would, you know, to buffer it and make the water less corrosive. So there's a really wide kind of you know, range of filtrations you could put in. And as we mentioned, even just right up, you know, running the water for a good 30 seconds in the morning helps to drop the lead levels. I mean, you know, as a water conservation organization, we'd prefer you put a filter on so you're not constantly running the water every morning. But yes, that is a way that you can protect yourself, you know, from lead that's been sitting in the pipes overnight. So.
Another tip too, before you consider putting a whole house filter on, you know, consider where you're going to be using the water for consumption. You don't want to necessarily treat the water that you're going to use to water the lawn or, you know, or wash your car. You may be better off putting one under the sink, the kitchen sink, wherever you're going to be using. Yeah.
And that national,
it's
okay. No, that National Sanitation Foundation guide, you know, has a full kind of extensive list of all the filters that are approved to remove lead. So again, I think it's good to just double check before you buy something to make sure that it will actually do the trick.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and a question here. Do realtors get fact sheets for all new residents? Or is there any plan to try to reach out to realtors to educate them, you know, to the new homeowner that they should test for lead?
I would, as far as it from a municipal supply, and those reports are available on the consumer conference reports that we have, and yeah, easily accessible there. If you have a home that has its own well, then it's a requirement now to have home testing of those wells before the you know, transaction's completed. So you would have a better idea then.
Yeah, and one of the actions on that the lead task force is kind of pushing for is that with a home sale, that we start to kind of keep track that there should be mandatory testing when a home is sold for lead, and that we keep track of those homes that have tested and are okay, and that those results be passed on to the buyer when they buy the home. So that is not in place yet, but that is part of the New Jersey's plan to address the lead issue. So that's coming down the pike, I think.
So we have a question here from Annette Lovelace. She said she doesn't live in our watershed, but can she still get a test kit from us? If not, where should she go for an affordable but effective testing?
Yeah, I mean, anyone who can drive to one of our offices in Bedminster or Flemington, whether you're in, you know, outside of our watershed or in Pennsylvania, you can come and pick up a test kit to test for lead. And or if you're on a private well for other contaminants as well. There are private labs throughout New Jersey. I would choose a state certified lab. You can contact them directly and arrange for a lead test to be done that way. I do not recommend doing the test kits that you buy at the big box stores that you pull off the rack. I know it says it's $10 on the outside of the package, but you get it home and they want you to send in a $40 check to be able to pay for the testing before they'll send you the results. So they'll get you one way or another. Yeah, so state certified lab or contact us. So.
Right. Yeah. Or the other option is too, they'll do the test for free, but then try to sell you a water
softener, right.
This is a good one. What would you two say to community leaders listening today to impact their communities? What do you hope we will do next?
I mean, if you can, you know, share, you know, just the basics with your community, whether it's on your website or through social media about the importance of testing, you know, and then, you know, maybe some ideas of how they can then remediate the situation, you know, that they can flush their water, they can install a filter, but, you know, giving people the information that they need so that they can then take the next step, I think is a great, you know, kind of first step for communities.
Yeah, I'd echo that as well. It's, you know, the education portion. We have a speakers bureau too that can talk on, you know, many aspects of water and can offer that out.
Or you could hold a lead testing event in your community. That's another good thing that you can do, right? Even if it's at a farmer's market or an evening, you know, before your environmental commission meeting, or, you know, invite your residents to come down and pick up a bottle. And then it's as easy as just, you know, setting up maybe a couple of hours the following morning where people can drop off their samples and they can be tested. It's a really simple process to be able to set up one of these events. And, you know, again, making it convenient and easy for people is really the name of the game to get them to test. So as easy as you can make it is usually more effective.
Any more questions? We might actually get out early today and have some time to go and take a nice walk in this 72-degree weather we're having.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
But yep. You sure? No more questions? We're happy to answer them. Okay, Mara, I'll hand it over to you. It looks like we don't have any more questions coming in, but a lot of thank yous and a lot of people appreciating your presentations, which were both wonderful.
No, thank you again for those who attended, and thank you once again to Scott Baxter-Green from New Jersey American Water. It was so nice to have you. We all learned a lot today, I think. And again, you can view this. We're going to post the video and the slides up on our website. So if you wanted to go back and view it again or share it, you can do that. And then don't forget, we do have some other upcoming events, and you can check our website for those webinars that are coming up. And with that, I'll say adieu. Thank you so much. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.